Hello everybody and welcome to another video by Blissful Techno Health. Check it out. Today we're going to be covering some material in the Comptia A+ certification training by yours truly, Blissful Techno Health. We're working on exam 220-902. There's also a 901, which I will be doing the 901 later. These videos are covering small portions at a time. In this video, we're going to cover boot methods. So if you have downloaded the exam objectives, then follow along. If you haven't downloaded the objectives, then just see this card on my video now. You can click here and it will take you to that video where I show you where to get these exam objectives. It's important to have these exam objectives so that you can make sure you understand all the material that they want you to know and cover to be able to take and pass the A+ certification, at least the 902 portion. And there's a lot of material. So we're going to go over just the boot methods for now, so stay tuned. Now, if you're new to, I'm going to treat these like you're new to computers. So I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. A boot method, we're going to talk about what those are. But before I get to that, I want to talk about your computer in general and what happens when you turn your computer on. Okay, so you have your computer, you push the power button, you turn your computer on, and the first thing that happens is the motherboard inside has its own software built into it. Okay, that software is the first thing that loads up when you turn your computer on. That's a part of that motherboard. That software needs to be told what to do. So you can jump into that software, which I'll cover in another video on how to do that, but you need to jump into that software and make sure that you have the proper boot methods set. If you have a new computer you're just putting together, then you shouldn't have to change any of your boot options. It should automatically boot and work for you out of the box. But let's talk about what that boot method is now. After you get your computer booted up and it does its initial post, if you have a brand new motherboard in your computer and there is nothing to boot to, it's going to come up and say no bootable device or no hard disk found, no operating system found, no OS found, something along those lines. Okay, and what's happening is there's no Windows installed on the computer if you're building a brand new computer. So we're going to have to address and use one of these boot methods to get Windows installed on that computer. If you have a computer with Windows already installed in it, you might be trying to boot to a different media for other purposes. If you want to boot to a bootable CD, okay, or other media to be able to use some utilities that are outside of the Windows environment. But for now, let's just talk about these boot methods. Okay, let's go over them. Looks like here we've got USB, Cd-Rom, DVD, PXE, also some people call it Pixie, which is actually booting over the network through a server, solid state or for flash drives, net boot, external hot swappable drive, internal hard drives. The most common ones, depending on the environment you're going to deal with, is typically one of these two. If you're trying to get an OS installed or boot to a utility. The other method is to your hard drive after you get your OS installed. If you're working in a large environment where you're having to do Windows installs and etc., you might be booting over a Pixie. Macs use the net boot to boot over the network. Very similar to the Pixie, but for the Macs, Apples. Now let's talk about these different boot methods individually. USB. If you're wanting to install Windows, you can actually create a USB Windows flash drive, boot to that flash drive, and install Windows via the flash drive. But you have to be sure that your motherboard is set to boot to the flash drive. When you boot to that flash drive, it'll bring you into that Windows setup or recovery, which will allow you to proceed with that install. Cd-Rom and DVD are actually the same thing. Well, I mean, a CD-ROM, as we all know, is different, but they're going to typically use the same drive. We haven't used CD-ROMs by themselves since the early 2000s. So everything you're going to see is either going to be Blu-ray or DVD burner. which those encompass all of this. The reason you'd ever boot to a DVD is the same reason as USB. You just need to boot to a media. A lot of times it's to install your Windows operating system, which can be done from CD-ROM or DVD, which is also known, I wanted to mention that if you boot to these, that's usually called your optical drive. Your DVD-ROM drive, your CD-ROM drive, it's your optical drive. That optical drive you will use to boot to a CD or a DVD to install an operating system or boot to a utility outside of the Windows environment or to install Windows. Pixie is a network boot that you can use in a large network corporate environment. I mean, you don't have to, that's typically where you will see it, to install Windows over the network. So you have to set your motherboard firmware, that software on the motherboard we talked about earlier, to boot over the network to the server to pull the information off to install the Windows operating system. Solid state and flash drives. Okay, solid state are basically internal hard drives, but we also have USB flash drives, which are technically solid state because they're just a chip. They don't have moving parts in them like a hard drive does. So it's solid state in that term, but typically it's usually going to be, if you're using a flash drive, it's because it's a USB drive. So it's associated with USB drive. Solid state drive is actually an internal hard drive. And there's different form factors for solid state hard drives, which I will cover in another video. NetBoot is booting over the network, typically found in the Apple Macintosh environment. External hot swappable drive, sometimes you can find a hard drive that slides into a bay that you can boot to. You'll usually see those in a corporate environment or larger environment on a server. You can find them on some towers, like personal computers, but it's not very common. In my 13 years of doing IT, I don't think I've ever seen a single person actually booting from an external hot swappable drive. I've seen people use USB hard drives to boot images and whatnot, but not an external, or not a hot swappable drive. Internal hard drive is your 3.5-inch hard drive that you will typically find in your desktop PC, 2.5-inch hard drives in a laptop. Your internal hard drive is typically where your destination will end up being. And what do I mean by that? Is if you're installing Windows from a USB drive or an optical drive, or a Pixie boot, you're putting that operating system on the internal hard drive, so that after you have installed Windows via one of these methods, you will now be booting to the internal hard drive to run your computer. So as you're running your computer, you're running off of your internal hard drive or your solid state hard drive. I hope all of this made sense. So just remember, you've got your motherboard that has its own firmware, its own software. When you first turn your computer on, it needs to know what to do. What is it going to boot to? What environment do you want me to go into? Typically, you want to get to your operating system, but you have to get your operating system installed onto the hard drive, which happens via typically one of these methods. Those are the most common ones. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. I hope this makes sense. If you have questions about the different boot methods, please shoot me a comment down below. I'm here just to try to help you guys out the best I can with the experience I have. And please give me a thumbs up on this video and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video. Thanks guys, peace out, have a great night.